I'm Nemo.
Well, Nemo, all new explorers must answer a sociology question.
Okay.
What is the dominant cultural ideology of society?
Hegemony. Hegemony. Hegemony.
Okay, don't hurt yourself. Welcome aboard, explorers!
Welcome aboard, YouTube. Today we'll be talking about hegemony. Say that enough times and it starts to not sound like a word, which is kind of how hegemony works if you think about it. Hegemony, simply defined, is the domination and influence of one group, entity, or set of ideas over others. It is the dominant ideology or beliefs of a society that defines what is right, natural, ideal, and unavoidable. It's often considered what is best and most beneficial for a society as a whole, and it's often understood as the way things are by everybody. Well, not everybody, but we'll get to that. Basically, hegemony is the way in which we understand how power works and operates on a cultural level. Now, cultural hegemony as a theory was developed by Antonio Gramsci, who, while not coining the term himself, did a lot of work expanding on the concept. Most of this work being done from a prison cell, as he was arrested by the Italian fascist government for opposing Mussolini. Sorry, bro. Now, as a Marxist, Gramsci was primarily concerned with the struggles of the working class against the ruling class. Now, at the time of his writing, in the late 1920s, early 1930s, the working class movements were failing and fascism was on the rise. With this theory of cultural hegemony, Gramsci sought to explain why the working class revolution to overthrow the exploitation of a capitalist economy, predicted by Karl Marx over a century earlier, had yet to occur. Why weren't he and his bros leading the working classes in a glorious revolution against capitalism, rather than being locked away in a prison cell? Excellent question, Gramsci. He concluded that the answer was hegemony, and that it operates in two ways: coercive control, or direct force, and consensual control, which is when society as a whole accepts the worldviews of the dominant group. This can be achieved through control of the media, education, legislation, entertainment, medicine, religion, politics, economics, etc. So basically, an ideology has reached hegemonic status when it becomes common sense to everyone and is absorbed into the culture. Some examples of this could be in the United States. We have this pervasive belief in the myth of the American dream, our ability to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps, and that anyone can make it here with just a little hard work. The reverse of that being that if someone is struggling, it's because they were lazy or they didn't try hard enough, rather than it being a flaw of the system. Other examples include ideas about the roles of men and women, men being the head of the household, women being primary caregivers, the belief that the institution of marriage should just be between one man and one woman, or that marriage itself should be the ultimate goal of all romantic relationships. The idea that there are only two genders, and that gender itself is a fixed thing. The beauty industry, telling us that the lighter your skin, the more attractive you are. That attractiveness should be the end goal. The police are there to protect and serve, and people on welfare are lazy. Which isn't to say that hegemony is by nature a bad thing. When we're talking about hegemony, we're talking about the dominant ideology and the common held beliefs of a society, as decided by the ruling group. For example, some arguably positive cultural beliefs and practices in American culture would be compulsory vaccinations and the theoretical belief in universal education. The tricky thing about hegemony is that it's so pervasive that it tends to be invisible. It's what Beautiful Trouble calls a politics that doesn't look like politics, which makes it hard to recognize and resist. It's not so much not knowing what a problem looks like as not even knowing that there's a problem at all. Because when a culture becomes hegemonic, it becomes common sense for the majority of a population. Kaylee, yeah, I have a question. If hegemony is supposed to be invisible, how do we know what it looks like? Excellent question, YouTube. An important thing to understand about cultural hegemony is that no society is ever completely hegemonic. Come again? There will never be a universal consensus on beliefs, meaning that there will always exist what Gramsci terms counter-hegemonic cultures that oppose the hegemonic ideology. If it helps, think of them as the hipsters of society without the neckbeards and addiction to vinyl. And it's within these cultures that we find a potential for a shift in dominant cultural beliefs and ways in which the culture and society as a whole can be changed. Cultural hegemony is not a fixed thing. It's constantly struggling to maintain and adapt its dominance over other ideologies, entities, and groups. The dominant culture is fighting to keep its status, while counter-hegemonic cultures are fighting for their alternate worldviews to be accepted as valid. Power of hegemony, therefore, doesn't come just from above in the form of enforcement, but also from below, with the subordinate cultures spontaneously consenting to hegemonic rule because they think it will serve their best interests. In order to maintain its dominance, the hegemonic culture must therefore compromise, negotiate, and adapt in order to convince and reconvince subordinate cultures that it's within their best interests to fall in line with the current hegemonic system. So, what does that look like? Fox News. Well, subordinate cultures usually react in three ways to hegemonic ideology. The first is changing aspects about the self to conform. For example, when immigrants come to the United States and change their names to sound more American, or when people of color are required to alter their hair rather than wear it naturally because it's considered unprofessional in the workplace. The second way is conforming in some ways and rejecting in others. An example of this being gay marriage. Conforming to this ultimate ideal of romantic relationships through the institution of marriage while rejecting heterosexuality. And three, rejecting entirely entirely, although possibly still receiving benefits from the hegemonic culture in one way or other, such as the case with anti-vaxxers who reject vaccinations for themselves, but who still benefit from herd immunity created by the vaccinations. The project of hegemony is never and can never be fully complete. And the struggle for different beliefs and ideas to dominate over others is occurring constantly. An important thing to take away from this is that hegemony itself is not a stagnant system, but rather a process of invention and reinvention by those who live within it. So yeah, that's hegemony. Thank you for watching. I hope this video was informative, and as always, if you have any questions or if you'd like to find out more, there are links in the description below, and you can ask questions in the comments. Today's question is, what are some examples of cultural hegemony that you can think of? In the next video, we'll be talking about masculinity. But until then, happy unlearning.